How do we build setups for the Porsche 992? How can we make it predictable and easy to drive, but not suffer from pace? We still want to be on the pace. Now, this car has two massive issues. The first issue is that the fuel tank is in the front and it's getting more empty as we drive it. This means the car will be more sensitive on steering input and the weight transfer will go to the back through the stint. So it will become more difficult to drive the further we go. The tires are wearing. When the tires are wearing, this is adding insult to injury. This combination with the fuel tank and the rear and the front tires are like wearing, this is getting us in a lot of troubles. But I found some tactics to get around this, to tune this car, and you won't get any surprises in the end of the stint. So let's get into it. Oh, and by the way, I want to shout out to the people who've been supporting the channel financially. Special shout out to Matthew, who absolutely donated a generous tip. Thanks, man, and here's your Porsche video. So when we take the Porsche to Imola, we have the preset that I shared on the channel. So the preset, and what this preset does for the Porsche is basically not making it a Porsche. So this setup, as it is a very like unfitting for, let's say, the Aston Martin, you actually need to change these values by a whole lot to get that competitive. This Porsche doesn't really need a lot of work in this preset that I built, which still is amazing to me. Somehow I like found these values. The only difference for the Porsche, if we keep the aero ride height basically the same, we crank up that whole anti-roll bar on the rear. This is because it's too much of an understeer when we're coming out of corners. The reason why you can do this with the Porsche is because we have all that weight on the back. So this is allowing like more acceleration on throttle, which is like a super duper power like property of this car. This initial acceleration is absolutely amazing. So we can get away with this, and this drives perfectly through the whole stint. It of course the tank is gonna get empty, it's gonna get a bit more sensitive, but it will not bite you in the ass. It will keep being predictable, and you can drive this for like a million laps until your tires are completely gone. Let's look at that lap, and I will tell a little bit about the Porsche and how we like need to avoid certain things, and let's go. So on the straight with this Porsche, I actually choosing the full wing for this whole like Imola thing, because this rear wing is absolutely important for the Porsche and its stability, especially when we trail braking into this next corner we go into. Now on this preset, I really believe everybody can drive the Porsche like this preset. It's really safe, it does really feel like a Porsche, and also these like properties that makes this car really good and special, and rotating is actually tuned out a lot. So I got a lot of positive comments on the Setups Made Easy videos about this preset being very predictable. Now you can see how this was understeering, yeah? On throttle it will understeer quite a lot, but also these bends are really good in this preset, and it's just very much predictable. Now something you need to be careful of with the Porsche, if you don't, you should really be cautious for not sliding with this car. As soon as it starts sliding, like over here, now this was a very short while, but if it's actually going to slide, then that tire patch will heat up and you will lose even more grip, and that will heat up the tire more, and then the next corner you're gonna get into more trouble because you have that extra tire heat exaggerating the problem every time. and then you get just into a massive issue with this car. So you really need to control that rear and make sure it doesn't slide on you. So I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm already 25 minutes into my practice session, and I am driving this 25 minutes laps to determine how the Porsche setup needs to be, because the most difficult area of the Porsche is in the end of the stint. So I am building the setup from these worn tires that I already driven for 25 minutes. And when I came up with this level 1 setup, let me explain. What I basically did here is I just added some ride height on the rear, and I increased the bump stop ranges a bit. And I was really feeling that this car was actually rolling. There was not a lot of chassis movement, and I kind of felt like very understeery and oversteery. So I took a little bit of that anti-roll bar from the front and the back. So this is allowing a little bit more body roll into its chassis, getting some more weight on these wheels. And yeah, and I took a little bit of this traction control, a little bit lower than the previous one. And that was basically it. So the reason being, if I can still control it now with worn tires and an empty tank, so I'm using 15 liters every time, it needs to replicate the end of the stint. Let's look at the lap. Now, another thing that is important, as we have an empty tank with this setup tuning, is that we still need to consider when we have a full tank, then that front will actually a bit lower, and it needs to behave nicely on the curbs. Because the tank is empty now, it's like curb behavior can be somewhat of something unpredictable. So if you're gonna use this method that I'm using, this is something you want to remember as well. So don't go crazy on these bump stop ranges. And let's see, so over here I increased those ranges, and you can see me correcting already a little bit. It's getting more playful. The rear is going to be more dominant in this setup, but it's absolutely making my day. This is actually more fun, and there's actually more pace in it. Now, in this session, or like in this laps, we're on lap 16. The tires are, again, they're more worn, but they're not really super bad. So if you're gonna look at that screen in the setup menu, it's like 2.4 or 2.3 on the back at this moment. So not bad. And so there's also that lap, that 141.7, I actually achieved with that preset, like when the tires were still really good. So there's a lot of pace in that preset as well. So yeah, let's go to that next levels setup. In the first preset, that was actually a preset that is like completely removing all the strengths of a Porsche, but also its weaknesses. Then the second one is already getting more competitive and still like safe, but it's getting more like a Porsche. Now on the level 2, this is what I found really good actually. So we're gonna load this up. Now we're driving a Porsche, and reason being, more ride height on the rear. And I'm seeing now I actually increased the front as well, because I was struggling a little bit on curbs, so an extra millimeter over there as well. Now on the mechanical grip section, I actually removed some bump stop range on the back, which makes the back of the car a bit higher under load. So on throttle behavior, a little bit more rotation was necessary to like drive this a bit faster. Also, I decreased the brake bias for more rotation on entry and braking, and we took off the ABS, and we took off some traction control. You can, I believe you can still go lower with this traction control, maybe level 3, 4, we're gonna have to see. And yeah, this menu I didn't touch. Now, again, we're on worn tires with this empty tank, and now you need to be sensitive with your steering inputs because we have that extra ride height we created, and now this is driving like a proper Porsche. And you can use this weight of the back to rotate these cars, especially in this longer bends, but it's still somewhat controllable. And yeah, so, and there's the bump stop ranges. Now, yeah, just look at the lap. Let's go. Now, what do I mean with being sensitive on steering? This means as soon as we hitting the brakes, we should really have that steering wheel straight, and we should really like use only like maybe a half a degree of input, and then that back is gonna rotate into that corner for you. And this is a weakness, but this is also its strength, because you have so much like possibilities with this rear end to rotate this car into corners, getting like additional slip angle and go on your throttle earlier out of corners. And what's gonna happen with this car, because its initial acceleration, let's say from like second and third gear, is so absolutely insane that actually if people want to try to overtake you, they can actually never do it on circuits where there's a lot of corners, because this monster just pulling away out of these corners. And that's the absolute strength of the Porsche. And also the sound is absolutely amazing. And in VR I actually really enjoy how everything is looking, like the dash. And I really in love with this display as well. This car is just growing on me. Every lap I drive it, I gonna appreciate it more. So yeah, and this lap also was increasing a little bit. Now what I found, if you just fuel this up now, these tires are getting more worn and worn. This is lap 19. With a full tank and fresh tires, this will go fast as well. So now we have two scenarios. We have the level 3 and 4. Now I built 3 and I wasn't really happy with this. This was just getting too, like, I could not control this. My driving style isn't fitting for this. So I increased that preload differential so we get that off throttle behavior, having less rotation with this higher value. And I also increased that front anti-roll bar because it was pitching too much. And I increased this from front wheel rate. And I also stiffened up the front dampers to get that initial pitching out of the way. And this was because I only pushed one more ride height, 1 millimeter higher on the ride height. Now, take note, the tires were also wearing more because I'm still using the same tires for these test runs. So look at this setup. Maybe you want to try it. Maybe it's good and fitting for you. I came up with another one. And this one I actually like the most. So we still have these values. I took that ride height on the front. I took that off. I got back to my original damper setting, but I just got more of this front wheel rates back again. And because I took this extra millimeter of rear ride height, I actually could increase the bump stop ranges also, which is a bit strange still to me, but this was actually the best setup I came up with for Imola. And yeah, let's look at the lap. Just a little side note here. I got that anti-roll bar back on 3 as well, because now, because of this ride height we got, comparing to that like preset, we actually got some grip back from this loose anti-roll bar, which was actually making the back sticking again. And it wasn't really, this setup just doesn't understeer anymore if we put like this anti-roll bar back down again, which creating grip again as we like go into corners and everything. So that's something. Let's look at that final lap. you actually won't believe how much time it's taking to build setups for this Porsche. At least it's taking me a lot of time. So please hit that like button, guys. That would really help me out. And at some point I need to fucking charge money for this, because it's so much work and it's putting so much value in here. But anyways, I wanted to provide this just on the channel because, yeah, need to grow the channel, yeah. Anyways, so what I still want to say, now if you like, this is also with like worn tires and an empty tank. If you do this with fresh tires and an empty tank, this is a great setup. And then when you fuel this up, this just the steering input is just a lot slower, but this is actually a good thing. But you need to be more on your like front seat, like more on edge when you drive it through the stint. What I also wanted to say is, when you're using this level 4 setup and all these setups, you can go with that brake bias a lot lower, and then you could increase the brake bias when you go through the stint. The car will warn you that you need to like increase your brake bias. You should really have it on the steering wheel. So that's also really important to take note, to squeeze some extra pace and rotation out of the car when it's full of fuel. So yeah, here we got like 41.5. I believe if it's with an empty tank and fresh tires, we can do 41 or something.